thank you for joining us this morning. We've got some bills up on the House floor today that we want to talk about. I'm House Minority Leader Lisa Damath, and today we're going to be hearing a state government bill, and Democrats are on a spending spree. That is what you're going to hear and see when this bill does come up. Government bureaucracy is the only thing that is benefiting out of this bill. There's pay raises for politicians, massive budget increases for agencies, and doubling down on wasteful spending like the SOB, the state office building renovation. And it is outrageous. The other thing you're going to hear about is Minnesota taxpayers are going to be on the hook for the governor for $17,000 per month for him to live at Sunfish Lake. The other bill that we're going to have up today is a transportation bill. And at a time when residents are struggling to pay their bills, the state government has a $17.5 billion surplus. Democrats can't curb the constant appetite to raise transportation-related taxes by nearly $3.45 billion while wasting more of your money on transit boondoggles and more. The last bill that we're going to have up is our veterans bill. That is a bill that I am happy to report has been separated out. It is a standalone bill, as it should be. Our veterans should not be partisan. Our military members make great sacrifices, and they have kept us safe and continue to defend our liberty. This bill supports our state's National Guard members and veterans after their service to our state and our nation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our transportation lead, Representative John Petersburg.
Thank you for being here. I am John Petersburg, and I am the GOP lead for transportation. So with almost a 30% growth in income and spending that this bill has, which includes, as you heard, a $3.5 billion tax increase, the largest of which is the 0.75% sales tax in the metro area for transit. Now, this is at a time in which transit has gone through a major transition in its ridership and the behavior that people have in riding to it. As a matter of fact, the latest report that we got from Met Council said that the fare box recovery, that means the people that ride the trains and buses and so forth, all of them are under 10%. And what that means is that for every person that rides those particular, either it's a bus or train, 9 others have to pay the same amount to subsidize that particular fare. Now, we need to certainly take care of our public transit, but when we have an amendment, which I'm authoring, to have a post-COVID analysis determining what is actually the behavior of our riders, I think it's ill-advised for us to be spending this kind of money, raising these kind of dollars for a program that we may not be actually being very effective at. We may be actually enhancing and improving programs that are going to be even more costly into the future. I think it's time for us to have a little common sense in regards to that. The other major tax increase is the delivery tax promoted, which is a 75-cent delivery fee for every delivery in the state of Minnesota. There is some tinkering around with that, but that's an extremely regressive tax. Matter of fact, so is the sales tax, and it's going to hit our lowest income people altogether. So if we continue to expect MnDOT to do more, we need to disconnect with the assumption that funding can be based upon user fees that currently we use. The surplus in general fund has to be part of the solution, but not tax increases. So these tax increases that you're seeing right now are extremely cost prohibitive. $3.5 billion in tax increases, almost a 30% growth in transportation. Whereas I do agree with the need for them for increased funding for roads and bridges, because transportation is essential to every part of the state, every economy of the state depends on roads and bridges, airports, ports, rail and freight. It needs to be impacted by the general fund as well, and it's something that we will need to continue to move forward. And with that, I think I'm turning it over to Representative Nash.
Thank you, Representative Petersburg. Good morning. My name is Jim Nash. I serve District 48A, which is Carver County, and I serve as the lead on our State Government Finance Committee. And, you know, sometimes I look to encapsulate what we're going to be talking about today with a quote from somewhere and someone famous. And I've used this for a number of times, and it's by Oscar Wilde, and it says, "The bureaucracy is expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy." Once again, that's the bureaucracy is expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy. And what we're talking about today in the state government finance bill is a bill that grows government and the state government bill just by 41%. And I meant that to be rather funny. We're growing the government by 41%. That's going to add 350 new employees. The net will be a $45 million increase. And there are things in here like the Attorney General's office is going to see a huge increase, a 67% increase over base. The Governor's office will be getting 155% over base. The Department of Administration will be getting 137% over base. And the Department of Administration has the unique responsibility of taking care of a piece of property that Leader Dameth just mentioned, and we'll be talking about that today. But you know, the governor's temporary mansion, if you will, is now being rented by Minnesotans for $17,000 a month while the governor's mansion is being renovated. And because I like to do research, I found something that was rather interesting. And a number of years ago, the Arkansas governor's mansion was being overhauled. And, you know, a governor should have a place to live, and they should be responsible, and they should let the people of the state that they represent feel like they are being represented by somebody who has their best interest in mind. And then Governor Huckabee took a temporary living spot of a triple-wide mobile home trailer. And you can insert any Arkansas joke you wish here. I married a girl from Arkansas, so I can make those jokes without getting beat up later on. But this is the kind of message, I think, that gets sent by that move that isn't being sent by locating in a $17,000 per month mansion. That the money that comes into the state coffers comes from someone's wallet, and that the chief executive should respect where it came from and not abuse it to the tune of $17,000 a month. So overall, we are seeing a massive bloating of state government. We are going to be bringing some amendments to point that out. And I just think that in a time where people are trying to figure out how to pay their mortgage and feed their children, put gasoline in their tanks, and make sure that they are planning for their future without having money literally clawed from their wallet, that a budget that grows just in state government 41% is a little bit of a slap in the face. And that's why we need to slow down the growing of the bureaucracy, because the needs of the existing bureaucracy are already well met. So thank you, and I believe I'll be turning this over to Representative Torkelson.
Good morning, Representative Paul Torkelson, Deputy Leader and Lead on the Elections Committee. Today we'll be voting on the second major elections bill in less than a week. And while there are many provisions in this bill that do have bipartisan support, there are many other ideas that only Democrats support. That's why I'm calling it the Protect DFL Victories Act 2. Just like last week's bill, we'll again likely see a court challenge. Last week it was express advocacy and First Amendment rights. This week, the question regarding national popular vote will surely see a constitutional challenge. You know, Minnesota has a long history of bipartisan support of election bills. Governors from 3 different parties over decades have demanded that election bills that come to their desk be a bipartisan effort, and then they were willing to sign the bills. As recently as 2019, President Governor Walz expressed that he expected election bills to be bipartisan. This year, in our House Elections Committee, Republicans presented 71 bills to be possibly heard in the Elections Committee. Out of those 71 bills, 71 Republican bills, the committee heard 1 bill. That bill actually received a warm reception but it's not in the omnibus bill. There are no Republican bills represented in this omnibus bill. The governor, however, has flipped his position, is now willing to sign a partisan bill that he is justifying this flip with a false narrative that every Republican is denying the results of the 2020 election. Minnesota elections have a long history of nation-leading turnout and high voter confidence. Many of the provisions in these bills will have a negative impact on voter confidence and burden local election officials with higher costs and heavier workloads. We could have worked together to present a bill that both parties could support, but instead we have the Protect DFL Victories Act. Thank you. I believe Representative Bliss is next.
Thank you. And now for some good news. I'm Representative Matt Bliss. I'm the GOP lead for the Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. This is my third term on that committee. This is a committee that we leave the R's and the D's at the door when we walk in, and we serve our veterans. This year, as we did last year, we're passing the Veterans Bill on its own. It was a bit of a challenge this year. We fought hard with our partners in the American Legions and veterans groups, and we succeeded in separating the bill again from the state gov bill. With that said, we are increasing the funding in the military affairs budget. A lot of that is back in 2018, we funded 3 new veterans homes in Bemidji, Montevideo, and Preston. We are funding the operations of those veterans homes in this bill. That's part of the increase. And I just want to say again that the veterans bill, this shows you what can be done in a bipartisan or nonpartisan matter. It's, when you work together, you really get some good bills. We have several Republican provisions in this bill, several Democrat provisions in this bill, and even the bills that were partisan when they were introduced got bipartisan support. A lot of the Democrat bills had Republican co-signers and vice versa. So again, this is a good bill. I'm proud to be the lead on this committee and ending the speech here on a little bit of a positive note. So thank you very much.
Questions?
Jesse, do you want to go?
Sure. Rep. Petersburg, you talked about using surplus dollars to fund transportation. What do you see as, some of the moves that would be appropriate to address shortfalls long-term in transportation funds?
Well, thank you for that question. So remembering that we have an $18 billion surplus, of that, about 2/3 of it is one-time money or for, that isn't going to go forward. But there's another close to $6 billion that moves forward into that. Transportation is one of those areas in which we have a lot of one-time expenditures in roads, bridges, other things that could certainly be used for that one-time money that would be very helpful in order for us to move things forward. Remembering that roads are important to everybody and everything. The department says that they're about $2 billion a year short on maintenance and repairs. That goes a long way for us to deal with those particular needs for transportation. It's just something that we need to remind ourselves of, that between the gas taxes of the federal and state, we're bringing in a lot of money, and those that are driving on trunk highways. By the way, trunk highways represent 11,000 miles of the state and represent about over 50% of the miles traveled. Their fare box recovery, in other words, what the dollars that they raise through their user fees, pays 100% of those costs. No other money from the general fund really goes into those direct costs. But some of the building and other things that we can expand out would be beneficial for that as well. And so I hope that answers your question.
I have one for hopefully Representative Torkelson, but maybe Representative Nash as well, is on the elections bill. And I'm curious as to what you think happened to ranked choice voting on your side. It looks like it's still in the Senate bill. It was heard in the House committee, but I'm not finding it in the omnibus. So what did it in your mind?
In my mind, ranked choice voting and national popular vote really cannot coexist. The ranked choice voting, by definition, eliminates some voters from the count. If you didn't choose one of the top 2 candidates, your vote will not be in the final count. And so when it comes to national popular vote, the idea is to have every vote count. So in my mind, those two cannot coexist in the same bill, and that's why, in my mind, why the Democrats pulled it out.
But you do have, I'm trying to remember the differences, you do have this minor party 10% threshold in the House bill, is that correct? That to be, to go from minor party to major party, now.
Yes,
we
and
need 5% of
Representative
votes.
Bliss actually is the expert on
Oh,
that.
good, okay.
So initially, when that bill came forward, it was 10% of the vote to get you on the ballot automatically, and also 10% of the vote to get you public funding. The match for the public funding stayed at 10%. They then went back down to the original 5% to get to be on the ballot automatically, and then you can also do the door-to-door and get the signatures to be on the ballot as well.
So that's better in your view? at least?
Well, you know, it's a start. I'm actually gonna propose an amendment that's gonna address that a little bit more. I think, you know, by limiting the amount of people that are on the ballot limits the conversation, and I think that's bad. I think the more people that we can get legitimate, my bill today is actually where the minor parties have to endorse a candidate through a caucus or a party. I think that's the right way to go. You know, if we have other people just stepping up and saying, hey, I'm with the Green Party with no Green Party organized support with them, I think that can cause problems, and the same with, you know, going the other way. So I think that's the right way to do it.
Rep. Nash, could you talk a little bit more about that 300, is it 350 you said new employees, or what was the exact figure there? And do you have any more details on the breakdown, where they're adding a bunch of folks, how many positions are temporary versus long-term?
So it is 350 new employees, and that's based on an estimate from the bills that were put in by the governor. And I think that is noteworthy to go beyond that, that the governor's request came in, and then the chair and the majority party decided to go over and above the governor's recommendation. And that's where some of the growth in employees that we can't necessarily pin down. So we've taken we've gotten nonpartisan research to help us understand where all those employees come from. But there's, it could be actually more than 350 based on what's in the governor's bill and in the plussing up by the chair.
When are you getting that final figure from nonpartisan research?
You know, we can have it probably later today. I mean, it's gonna have to go to conference committee and come back, but we feel very, very conservative in saying that there's 350 new employees that are almost a slam dunk.
While you're there,
Sure.
remember in committee, you were told that the Sunfish House deal was off? And that had been publicly reported in the media? Did you find any such reporting?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked the question. I'm glad to see you here in the press conference with us as well. You're always welcome to come to ours. But, so we actually heard a little rumor of that in the Ways and Means. Chair Cleavorn said that she was told that that deal fell apart. I think some of your fellow journalists put that to rest, and that I believe that the governor is still staying there. So we are going to have a very full-throated conversation about that. I have several amendments, and you know, again, just to bring your attention to it, the headline, if you want to look it up for your story later, is Arkansas governor moves into triple-wide trailer. Now, once again, that's a really interesting approach that another governor would take in order to just live somewhere temporary. And they were very proud of living there. They actually gave tours of the triple-wide. I think that that sends a very interesting message to the people of Arkansas that their wallet was being respected. And I have yet to find anybody who thinks that a $17,000 a month rent payment is an appropriate use of the public's money. And that does come out of the Department of Administration's budget. And I think that Minnesotans would love to have an answer as to how did somebody or a group of somebodies arrive at that number and think, that's a good idea, we'll put the governor there. Certainly the governor needs somewhere to live while the renovations are going. I think that there could have been a much more respectful place to put him that would have been found that didn't cost $17,000 taxpayer dollars a month.
Why don't you just buy the lake place and sell Summit? The neighbors would be happy.
Well, sadly, they don't put me in charge of those decisions. And if I had been in charge of the decisions, we would not have had somebody living in a house that cost that much per month.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.